Welcome to CinePro,
Jakob!
Hol es mir!
Immer mein.
where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The film Das Blaue Licht starts in King Karl's castle, where the soldiers are returning after winning a battle. They are hoping to receive a big reward for fighting so hard and helping the king win. Among the soldiers is one named Jacob. He has an injury on his arm from the war. Soon, King Karl comes to the balcony with his daughter, Princess Augustine, and speaks to the soldiers. He says, "You all have helped us win this great war. As a reward, my daughter will give each of you a bravery medal." Augustine comes down from the balcony and starts giving medals to each soldier. But when she tries to give a medal to Jacob, it slips from her hand. Jacob looks at her lovingly. The king sees this and says from the balcony, "Don't look at her like that, soldier. She's going to be married soon." After giving all the medals, the king tells the soldiers to return home. Outside the castle, Jacob tells the other soldier, "We fought for so long, but all we got was 1 coin and we didn't even get our full salary." His friend says, "Forget it, brother." But Jacob replies, "No, I'll go and demand my right from the king." As he tries to go back inside, the guards stop him and warn, "Leave quietly or we'll throw you in jail." His friend pulls him back and tells him it's dangerous to argue with the king. Jacob angrily bites the medal and breaks it, saying, "Even this medal is fake. This king is a fraud." Then he walks away with his friend. Later, they go near a forest where the friend takes a different path. Jacob goes toward the jungle. There, a witch named Dan lives in a hut. Every day, she collects herbs and eats bugs off the leaves. At the same time, Jacob's shoes tear and a thorn pricks his foot, making him scream in pain. Dan hears his scream and says, "Sounds like a man is in the forest. That means I found my groom." Excited, she starts making a magic soup using different plants and tells the crow in her cage, "If he drinks this soup for 3 days, he'll be mine forever." Jacob smells the soup and follows it to Dan's hut. Dan changes her appearance into a beautiful woman and comes out. She asks, "Who are you, traveler?" Jacob replies, "I'm a poor soldier. I'm tired and hungry. If you give me food and shelter, I'll do any work you want." Dan agrees and gives him soup. He feels better and she puts a special paste on his wound, saying it will heal faster. Meanwhile, at the palace, Princess Augustine's maid, unnamed, is doing her hair and says, "Your father wants you to master music quickly." Augustine replies, "I like forests and rivers more, but I'm learning music because my father insists." Back at Dan's hut, she looks at Jacob sleeping and is happy. But her parrot, actually a crow transformed by magic, makes noise, waking Jacob. Dan quickly changes back into her beautiful form. Jacob says, "Your paste healed me. If you need any help, I'll do it." Dan asks him to go outside and chop wood. While he does that, she prepares more magic soup. In the palace, Prince Fritz from another kingdom offers to marry Augustine, but demands King Karl's southern kingdom in return. Karl agrees to give command, but not full control. Fritz then says, "Since you're getting old and have no son, promise that after 10 years, I'll fully own it." Karl agrees and confirms the marriage. Augustine arrives and Karl introduces her to her future husband and leaves. Augustine thinks princes like music, so she says, "Let me play music for you." But Fritz rudely pulls out his sword and says, "I only like sword fighting." The next morning, when Jacob wakes up, he sees that Dan is in her real form. He gets suspicious, but pretends to still be asleep so Dan doesn't notice. Dan starts making soup because today is his 3rd and final day. Then Jacob pretends to wake up, so Dan quickly changes back into the girl form. But Jacob still feels something is wrong. Dan gives him the magical soup again and says, "Drink this. You won't feel hungry all day." But as soon as Jacob stirs the soup, he sees Dan's real face in it. He's shocked and scared. Still, he doesn't show it and stays calm. He quickly decides to pack up and leave. Dan feels bad that Jacob is leaving without drinking the soup on the last day. Dan follows him out of the hut, and every time Jacob tries to escape, Dan appears in front of him and says, "If you want to leave, do me a small favor first." Jacob asks, "What favor?" Dan says, "My blue lamp fell into that well. Please get it out." The well is dry, so Jacob agrees. He grabs a rope and climbs down. At the bottom, he finds a small blue lamp, puts it in his pocket and shouts, "Pull me up." Dan starts pulling, but halfway up refuses to pull him the rest of the way unless he gives her the lamp first. But Jacob insists, "First take my hand, then I'll give the lamp." Dan gets angry, lets go of the rope, and Jacob falls hard back down into the well. But Dan throws the rope down along with his belongings, so Jacob can't escape. Now Jacob has no other way out, so he sadly sits down, takes out his pipe, and tries to light it using the blue lamp. But suddenly, the lamp disappears, and a genie appears and says, "What can I do for you?" Jacob gets scared and asks, "Who are you?" The genie replies, "When the blue lamp is lit, I appear." Jacob says, "Then get me out of here." The genie says, "I was also a slave of Dan, but now I'll show you a secret path. The genie turns a lever hidden in the wall and a secret door opens that leads to a basement. When Jacob reaches it, he's amazed to see a treasure and starts wearing some of it. Then the genie appears again and asks, "Can I help with anything else?" Jacob says, "Arrange some food for me." The genie uses magic to go through the path and bring food. Jacob comes out with the treasure, and when he sees the delicious food, he starts eating, but the genie tells him to get ready properly before eating or using the treasure. He lights his pipe again using the lamp, and the genie comes back and asks, "What do you need now?" Jacob says, "I want to punish King Carl for his betrayal." The genie replies, "Tell me what to do." Jacob says, "First I want to rest at the inn, then I'll tell you." On the other side, King Carl is having breakfast with his daughter. He asks her, "What do you think of Prince Fritz?" Augustine replies, "He doesn't like music and neither do I, but all he talks about is sword fighting." Her father says, "Everything will be fine with time, but if you refuse to marry him, it might cause a war, and our people could suffer." On the other side, Jacob goes to a market wearing his new clothes. There, he buys some flowers and gives a gold coin to a shopkeeper. But meanwhile, a boy who was watching him from a distance starts following him. As soon as Jacob goes to another place to buy something, the boy steals the coin pouch from Jacob's waist and runs away. Jacob quickly chases after him, and every time Jacob gets close, the boy tricks him and escapes. But when Jacob finally gets near him, the boy turns and hides inside a barrel, but Jacob finds him. When the boy is caught, he gives Jacob his pouch back and says, "I stole this because I had no other choice. My mother is sick, and I have no money for her treatment." Then Jacob shows kindness, gives him a gold coin, and says, "Don't steal again after today." The boy says, "Okay." After that, Jacob goes to a lodging house and gives a few coins to the owner, saying, "I'll be staying here for a few days. Arrange food and a place to stay for me." The owner gives him a room on the upper floor. Jacob quickly locks the room and lights his pipe using the lamp. Suddenly, the genie appears in front of him and asks, "What is your wish?" Jacob says, "I want you to bring something from King Carl's palace, something very special to him, something that would hurt him if he loses it." The genie says, "All right." That night, the genie goes and brings Princess Augustine to Jacob by making her unconscious. The genie says, "She is the only one left in the royal family, so maybe she is the most special thing to him." Jacob says, "But what should I do with this girl?" The genie says, "Spend time with her. Maybe if she goes missing, the king will feel real pain." Jacob says, "Okay." Now the genie takes both of them to a beautiful forest. When Augustine opens her eyes, she sees Jacob and says, "Who are you? How did I come here?" Jacob says, "I brought you here, seeing the moonlit night and the beauty of the forest." Augustine feels impressed. She touches the grass and flowers and says, "I really like places like this. And aren't you the same soldier I gave a medal to?" Jacob says, "Yes." Just then they hear the sound of frogs from the lake. Augustine goes near the lake and seeing the scene in the moonlight and the whole place makes her happy. There's also a boat in the lake, so both of them sit in it. During the boat ride, Augustine says, "I always wanted to live a life like this. I can't believe all this is real." Jacob says, "Now believe it because it is real." After a little while on the other side of the lake, Augustine sees the genie. She asks Jacob, "Who is that?" Jacob says, "He is my servant. Morning is near. He will take you back to the palace." Augustine says, "All right, but promise me that you'll meet me again tomorrow night." Jacob says, "Okay." Next morning, Augustine wakes up early and feels very happy. While remembering the events of the night, she quickly tells everything to her special maid. Later, when she is having breakfast with her father, the king asks, "Why are you so happy?" Augustine makes excuses and avoids the question, which makes the king suspicious. The next night, the genie once again brings Augustine to Jacob. This time, Jacob takes her to a musical function. The two sing and dance together. During this time, they begin to fall in love with each other. In the morning, when Jacob gets close to Augustine, she says, "Tomorrow is my wedding, so this isn't right." Jacob asks, "Do you love that prince?" Augustine replies, "No, I'm only doing this because of my father." Jacob says, "Your father is a deceiver. He gave the soldiers only one coin as a reward, and the medal he gave wasn't even real gold. It was made of tin." Hearing this, Augustine angrily says, "My father isn't like that. You're lying." Jacob says, "I love you. Why would I lie? If you don't believe me, check for yourself." Augustine returns to the palace and asks her maid, "Tell me the truth. What is my father really like?" The maid says, "Your father is cunning and selfish." Augustine enters the king's chamber and takes out the medal. She bites it, and then she realizes that it's not made of gold either. Just then, the king arrives, and Augustine asks, "Why did you deceive the soldiers returning from war by giving them tin medals?" Saying this, she goes to her room. The king calls a guard and says, "Keep an eye on my daughter for the next 24 hours. Under no circumstances should she leave here." That night, the genie again brings Augustine to Jacob. This time, Augustine says to Jacob, "You were right. Now wherever you want to go, I'm with you." Jacob asks the genie, "Where should we go?" The genie begins describing cities from around the world. Meanwhile, when the king reaches near his daughter's room, he sees that the guard outside inside is asleep, and Augustine is not in the room. This makes the king furious. In anger, when the king questions her, and she refuses to say anything, he has her poor parents captured and says, "Tell me quickly where Augustine went, or I'll have your parents thrown into the dark dungeon." Forced by fear, the helpless maid tells him everything. On the other side, Jacob and Augustine plan to go to Italy, but Jacob, wanting to talk to Augustine alone, puts out his pipe, which causes the genie to disappear. Just then, the king arrives with his soldiers and captures both Jacob and Augustine. During this, Jacob's magic lamp is left behind at the inn. The king locks Augustine in her room and throws Jacob into the palace jail. After some time, Augustine starts thinking, "How can I escape from the room?" So she screams, "There's a fire!" Hearing this, the guard runs inside and Augustine hits him on the head with a pot, knocking him unconscious. She wears his clothes and cap and sneaks past everyone to go to the jail where she meets Jacob. Jacob says, "I know a better way to escape from here. Somehow bring my pipe and lamp from the inn." Back in the jail, a soldier says to Jacob, "Come, it's time for your execution." The boy goes to the inn and asks the innkeeper, unnamed, for the bag, but the greedy innkeeper refuses to give it. So, the boy breaks the innkeeper's things and takes the bag. Jacob is brought to the gallows. The king and the prince are seated in front of the stage. Just then, the maids bring Augustine to the king. The king says, "Agree to marry the prince, or I'll have Jacob hanged." Augustine looks at Jacob and pretends to faint to buy time. The king's attention turns to Augustine. The prince says no hanging until the princess regains consciousness. At that moment, the boy arrives at the palace gate. He distracts the guards by throwing a coin. Augustine stands up and says, "Father, a dying man's last wish should be fulfilled." The king asks, "What is his last wish?" Jacob says, "I want to take one puff from my pipe." The king says, "Fine, where is your pipe?" The boy, still hidden, brings the lamp and pipe and gives them to Jacob. As soon as Jacob lights his pipe from the lamp, the genie appears and says, "What is your command?" Everyone is shocked to see the genie. Jacob says, "Free me and teach a lesson to those trying to harm me." The genie breaks his bonds and then starts defeating the soldiers one by one. The soldiers try to attack together, but the genie knocks them all to the ground. The prince picks up a sword and runs toward the genie, but when he sees the genie coming toward him, he gets scared and runs away. Seeing all this, the king also gets scared. Then the genie asks Jacob, "What should I do with the king?" Jacob says, "Leave him near Dan's hut." In the next scene, the king wakes up and finds himself near Dan's hut, where Dan, the witch, begins preparing her magic potion after seeing him. And here, Jacob and Augustine get married. And that's where the story ends. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next recap video. Goodbye.